Armatures are quadruped, all-terrain heavy weapons platforms, akin to the armored fighting vehicles of other races. Geth being synthetic intelligences, armatures are not crude vehicles, but intelligent entities capable of independent decision-making and learning. Armatures are equipped with heavy kinetic barriers. Their main cannon, mounted on the articulated head turret, appears to be a highly efficient conventional mass accelerator. It's capable of firing in anti-personnel and anti-tank modes. Some armatures carry drones into battle, presumably for reconnaissance purposes. Others host a swarm of insect-sized repair microbots. The Geth models, collectively dubbed Hoppers by Alliance forces, are electronic warfare platforms. They can project electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum as an offensive weapon. It can also perform cyber warfare attacks against the onboard computers of body armor hardsuits and weapons, adversely affecting their performance. And the structure of Hoppers consists of an advanced and highly elastic artificial muscle material. This allows a hopper to compress its entire body for powerful leaps. Hoppers also have thousands of molecule-scale barbs on the surface of their hands and feet, which are used to cling to walls and ceilings. Hoppers are very difficult targets, leaping from one surface to another in rapid succession. The Quarians have no record of any Geth models similar to Hoppers. This new morphotype must have been developed over the last 300 years by the Geth themselves. This is troubling proof that the Geth are continuing to move towards technological singularity. Experts in synthetic life are intrigued that Hoppers appear to be even more organic than the baseline Geth. The identified subtypes of Hopper have been codenamed Sapper, Stalker, and Ghost. The Genophage bioweapon was created to end the Krogan rebellions. From the start, Krogan had overwhelmed the Council. Only timely first contact with the Turians saved the Council races. The Turians fought the Krogan to a standstill, but sheer weight of Krogan numbers indicated the war could not be won through conventional means. The Turians collaborated with the Solarians to genetically engineer a counter to the rapid breeding of the Krogan. The Genophage virus gained the energy to replicate by eating key genetic sequences. Every cell in every Krogan had to be altered for the weapon to be foolproof. Otherwise, the Krogan could have used gene therapy to fix the affected tissues. Once a genophage strain could find no more genes to eat, it would starve and die, limiting spin-off mutation and contamination. This created genetic flaws hereditary. The Solarians believed the genophage would be used as a deterrent, a position the Turians viewed as naive. Once the project was complete, the Turians mass-produced and deployed it. The Krogan homeworld, their colonies, and all occupied worlds were infected. The resulting mutation made only 1 in 1,000 Krogan pregnancies carry to term. It did not reduce fertility, but offspring viability. The rare females able to carry children to term became prizes the Krogan warlords fought brutal battles over. The Krogan are a shadow of their former glory. When the rebellions took place centuries ago, they are constantly reminded of the horror of the genophage and of their inability to counter it. The release of the genophage is still controversial, bitterly debated in many circles. After the Rachni War, the quick-breeding Krogan expanded at the expense of their neighbors. Warlords leveraged their veteran soldiers to seize living space. The council races were still grateful. Over centuries, The Krogan conquered world after world. There was all just one more needed. When the Council finally demanded withdrawal from the Asari colony of Lucia, Krogan Overlord Kredak stormed off the Citadel, daring the Council to take their worlds back. But the Council had taken precautions. The finest STG operators and Asari huntresses had been drafted into a covert observation force, the Office of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. The Spectres opened the war with crippling strategic strikes. Krogan planets went dark as computer viruses flooded the extranet. Sabotage antimatter refineries disappeared in blue-white annihilation. Headquarters stations shattered into orbit-clogging debris rammed by pre-placed suicide freighters. Still, this only delayed the inevitable. The war would have been lost if not for first contact with the Turians, who responded to Krogan threats with a prompt declaration of war. Being on the far side of Krogan space from the Council, the Turians advanced rapidly into the lightly defended Krogan rear areas. The Krogan responded by dropping space stations and asteroids on Turian colonies. 3 worlds were rendered completely uninhabitable. This was precisely the wrong approach to take with the Turians. Each is first and foremost a public servant, willing to risk his life to protect his comrades. Rather than increasing public war weariness, Krogan tactics stiffened Turian resolve. The arrival of Turian task forces saved many worlds from the warlords' marauding fleets, but it took development of the genophage bioweapon to end the war. There were decades of unrest afterwards. Rogue warlords and holdout groups of insurgents refused to surrender or disappeared into the frontier systems to become pirates. The migrant fleet has little economic base, operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth, while Quarian ships include light manufacturing and assembly plants. They lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. A single disaster could destroy the fragile balance. Quarians earn income in creative ways, because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual. The Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet to bring in resources and income. A species who suspects the migrant fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift of surplus starships, fuel, and resources to convince the Conclave to alter course. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over asteroids for metals and siliceous materials, as in cometary bodies for water, or ice, and organics. Korean miners are adept at locating and strip mining spaceborne resources. This sparks conflict with corporations already working the system. Large mining concerns spend millions on lobbyists and public relations, portraying the Quarians as locusts devouring the resources of a system before moving on. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, they are skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging for skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. Quarians are widely hated among the working classes. The Quarians are coming to take our jobs, is a common response to the fleet's approach. Due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, government is somewhat autocratic. The migrant fleet's operations are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave aboard the flagship. The number of representatives is based on crew size. Larger clans with bigger ships and more votes form the cores of political blocs. Opposition comes from the Outriders coalition, delegates from thousands of smaller ships. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decisions in most circumstances. However, if all 5 members agree that a Conclave decision jeopardizes the survival of the fleet and cannot get the Conclave to address their concerns, they have the right to summarily overturn the legislative decision. After the Admiralty uses this extraordinary power, they must resign. If the Admiralty does not step down after using their veto, the rest of the military is obliged to arrest them. Each ship captain has authority over his vessel, but is advised by an elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. This relationship may range from cooperative to polite tolerance to outright hostility, but any captain who overrules his council without good reason is relieved of command by the Admiralty. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big, rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Clan vessel captains are not subject to dismissal by the Admiralty. Abusive captains are a family problem if they do not disrupt the operations of the fleet. The migrant fleet is the largest concentration of starfaring vessels in the galaxy, sprawling across millions of kilometers. It can take days for the entire fleet to pass through a mass relay. When the Quarians fled their homeworld, the fleet was a motley aggregation of freighters, shuttles, industrial vessels, and the odd warship. After 3 centuries, all have been modified to support larger crews as comfortably as possible. As the Quarians achieved stability, they began weeding out the ships least suitable for long-term habitation, selling them and pooling the money to buy larger and more space-worthy hulls. This process is ongoing as vessels wear out and break down. While some ships enjoy dedicated cabins with full privacy and sanitary facilities, many more are former freighters whose cargo bays and containers are pressurized and divided into family spaces using simple metal cubicle bulkheads. The Quarians live in these austere spaces with colorful quilts and tapestries, which also help muffle sound. The day-to-day operations of the fleet, traffic control, station keeping, supply distribution, and so on, are under military jurisdiction. The ship captains have the authority to deviate from their assigned positions and may leave the fleet at any time. They are assumed to do so at their own risk. As the migrant fleet moves around the galaxy, many ships split off to pursue individual goals, returning days or years later. When Quarians of the migrant fleet reach young adulthood, they must leave their birth ship and find a new crew to accept them as permanent residents. To prove themselves, they must recover something of value. This is offered to their prospective captain as proof that they will not be a mere burden on the shoestring resources of the ship. This process is called the pilgrimage. Stripped of ritual, the pilgrimage is merely an attempt to maintain genetic diversity within the small, relatively isolated population bases that make up the migrant fleet. The young stayed and married within their birth vessel, the risk of inbreeding would increase sharply. Quarians are surgically fitted with their various immunity-boosting implants in preparation for leaving on pilgrimage. Having grown up within the sterile, controlled environments of the migrant fleet ships, Quarians have virtually no natural immune system. Citadel Security is a volunteer police service answering to the Citadel Council. The 200,000 constables of CSEC are responsible for maintaining public order in the densely populated Citadel. They also provide piracy suppression, customs enforcement, and search and rescue throughout the Citadel cluster. CSEC has 6 divisions. Enforcement: uniformed officers who patrol the Citadel and respond to emergencies. Investigation: detectives who puzzle out the truth behind crimes and bring the perpetrators to justice. Customs screens the thousands of passengers and cargo containers that pass through the Citadel's ports every day. Network deals with cybercrimes like identity and copyright theft, hacking and viral attacks, and illegal artificial intelligence. Special response deals with hostage situations, bombs, and heavily armed criminals. In the unlikely event that attackers board the Citadel, they are also the front line of defense, armed with military-grade equipment. Patrol: naval arm with ships stationed throughout the Citadel cluster. Unlike the other divisions, they are rarely seen at the Citadel, nor do they stay in one place long. Joining CSEC is prestigious. Applications must be sponsored by a Citadel counselor or the ambassador of an associated council race. Generally, applicants have many years of distinguished service in the military or police forces of their nation, but an inexperienced applicant with demonstrable talent will be fairly considered. CSEC and the Spectres are often at odds. Any CSEC members, notably current executor Venari Palin, believe that allowing Spectres to be above the law is a dangerous practice. The actions of Saren Arturius lend credence to this position. Spectres in turn are aggravated when CSEC's dedication to procedure and due process hamper their investigations. The Citadel is surrounded by a blue-tinted reflection nebula. The light of this nebula is actually light from the Citadel, scattered and reflected back at the station. At first, the Serpent Nebula was assumed to be made of microscopic construction debris. The prevailing theory holds that the Protheans used molecular nanotechnology to manufacture the incredibly durable materials used in the Citadel. But unlike other nebulae, the Serpent does not dissipate over time, therefore it must be replenished constantly. The current theory is that the non-recyclable waste collected by the Citadel's keepers is somehow rendered down to the atomic or molecular level and ejected into the cloud. The thick nebula presents a navigation hazard. Beyond the relatively clear areas around the Citadel, electric discharges are common. These are not blocked by kinetic barriers and can severely damage metal-framed starships. In addition, some dense knots of dust can overwhelm the repulsion of kinetic barriers on smaller ships. If such a vessel isn't moving fast enough at the time, the effects are similar to being hit by a sandblaster. Attempting to reach the Citadel through open space navigation is unadvisable. The only safe approach is through the various mass relays that orbit it. The majority of the Citadel's population lives in the wards, the 5 massive arms of the station that house the residential and commercial districts. Many galactic races have established cultural enclaves here. Population density and cost of living are extremely high, akin to Earth cities such as Hong Kong and Singapore. The wards are open-topped, with skyscrapers rising from the superstructure. Towers are sealed against vacuum, as the breathable atmosphere envelope is only maintained to a height of about 7 meters. The atmosphere is contained by the centrifugal force of rotation and a membrane of dense, colorless sulfur hexafluoride gas, held in place by carefully managed mass effect fields. The view from the wards is spectacular. In the background, stars, Serpent Nebula, and a nearby blue giant called the Widow move across the sky as the station rotates to stabilize itself. In the foreground, the lights of the buildings and vehicles on the opposing ward arms perpetually shine. The Citadel has no real day or night. While the station keeps to standard galactic time for political functions, businesses rarely close, and residents acclimate to sleep and work according to personal needs rather than a day-night cycle. Additions and modifications are constantly being constructed, though they must stay within certain specifications that will not compromise the operation of the station. Occasionally, the keepers will descend on an area of the wards and move or change the architecture without explanation. Residents have learned to live with these inexplicable intrusions. In the 22nd century, manipulation of the human genome became commonplace. Techniques of genetic engineering advanced to the point where the rich could custom build fetuses that grew into stronger, smarter, and more attractive adults. In more permissive regions, custom designed life forms and uplifted animals occupied an ill-defined niche between property and sapient being. Travel to planets with unique forms of life brought an awareness that Earth's unique biodiversity could be lost if spliced and hybridized to gain useful alien qualities. The Sodom-Wolcott Genetic Heritage Act was passed by the Systems Alliance Parliament in 2161. It imposed sharp restrictions on controversial uses of genetic engineering, but provided government subsidies for beneficial applications. Screening and therapy. Most governments provide free assessments and corrective therapy for genetic diseases in prospective parents. This has nearly eliminated everything from cystic fibrosis to nearsightedness. The earlier screening and therapy is performed, the more comprehensive the results. Though ideally performed on artificially fertilized zygotes in a lab, procedures are available for embryos in the womb and newborns out of respect for personal beliefs. Enhancement. Improvement of natural human abilities is legal, but adding new abilities is not. Treatments to improve strength, reflexes, mental acuity, or appearance are permitted. Adding a tail or the ability to digest cellulose is not. Some genetic enhancement is provided for free to the Alliance military recruits, but the average citizen must pay for the privilege. The process can take years to reach fruition in an adult. Engineering. Artificial hybridization of genes from compatible non-human species with human genetic code is illegal. Creation of designed life is broadly legal and mainly used for terraforming and medical applications. But sentient creatures are heavily regulated, and the creation of sapient life is outlawed by both the Systems Alliance and the Citadel Council. Humanity has encountered many galactic species. Wars have been few, but mistrust is rife. Politically, the Alliance is a peaceful trade partner of the Turians. As a practical matter, however, there is simmering antagonism and bigotry between both populations over the First Contact War of 2157. The Alliance enjoys good relations with the Asari, though many privately believe the matriarchs are aristocratic and overcautious. Though humans know better than to unconditionally trust any Solarian, their shared reckless ways make them natural allies against the conservative Turians and Asari. The Krogan have no unified government, but individuals are generally treated as potential criminals, a reputation most Krogan enjoy living down to. The Alliance has no formal contact with the Quarians. The migrant fleet has not yet passed through any human-settled system. The Batarians are rivals for control of the Skyllian Verge. They severed their treaties with the Citadel to prosecute a colonial conflict against the Alliance. Officially there is no war, but neither is there any peace. As the human race expands its territory and raises the general standard of living, demand for industrial resources continues to grow. Many planets, moons, and asteroids contain a wealth of resources. Many systems have barely been charted, let alone thoroughly surveyed. Unmanned probes are one solution, but they are often lost to space hazards, unforeseen circumstances, or theft by salvagers. In recent years, AGES, the Alliance Geological Service, has offered bounties to private individuals or teams willing to perform mineralogical surveys on the frontier. This survey data is made publicly available to further corporate development. Due to the cost of travel and the dangers of operating on hostile worlds, it is rarely a profitable endeavor. The Alliance military is of great concern to the galaxy. At first contact with the Turians, they were completely inexperienced. Turian disdain changed to respect after the relief of Shanxi, where the humans surprised them with novel technologies and tactics. The human devotion to understanding and adapting to modern space warfare stunned the state council races. For hundreds of years, they had lived behind secure walls of long-proven technologies and tactics. The council regards the Alliance as a sleeping giant. Less than 3% of humans volunteer to serve in their military, a lower proportion than any other species. While competent, Alliance soldiers are nearly as professional as the Turians, nor as skilled as the Asari. Their strengths lie in fire support, flexibility, and speed. They make up for lack of numbers with sophisticated technical support, VIs, drones, artillery, electronic warfare, and emphasis on mobility and individual initiative. Their doctrine is not based on absorbing and dishing out heavy shocks like the Turians and Krogans. Rather, they bypass enemy strong points and launch deep into their rear, cutting supply lines and destroying headquarters and support units, leaving enemies to wither on the vine. On defense, the human military is a rapid reaction force that lives by Sun Tzu's maxim, he who tries to defend everything defends nothing. Garrisons are intended for scouting rather than combat, avoiding engagement to observe and report on invaders using drones. The token garrisons of human colonies make it easy for alien powers to secure them, for which the Alliance media criticizes the military. However, the powerful fleets stationed at phase gate nexuses, such as Arcturus, are just a few hours or days from any colony within their sphere of responsibility. In the event of an attack, they respond with overwhelming force. Gagarin Station is the largest deep space station built by humanity. A Bernal sphere design with a 500-meter diameter habitable area was constructed beyond Pluto, nearly 8 astronomical units, 12 billion kilometers from Sol. Moving crew and materials to this location bankrupted most of the backers. Gagarin was placed at the inner edge of the heliopause, the point at which the solar wind can no longer push back the interstellar medium. It was built to test a number of faster-than-light principles that could theoretically only occur in interstellar space. The station was nicknamed Jump Zero, as it was intended to be the jumping-off point for humanity's expansion into the galaxy. Shortly after the station was completed, the Prothean ruins were discovered on Mars, rendering the entire effort moot. After struggling to make a profit for a decade, Gagarin was sold to the Systems Alliance in 2159 for a fraction of its construction costs. The Alliance refurbished it as a research and training center for the recently discovered biotic phenomenon. In 2169, the Biotic Acclimation and Training Program was shut down, and Gagarin became a general research facility. Its remote location and intentional isolation from the extranet makes it popular for dangerous research, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence. Humanity's first stable AI, the Alliance-sponsored Eliza, achieved sapience at Gagarin in 2172. Today, Gagarin Station has a permanent population of approximately 9,000. A plan has been proposed to move it to the gravitationally stable barycenter point between Pluto and the Charon Relay, allowing it to serve as a gateway facility between the Sol and Arcturus systems. The high cost of safely moving its mass has delayed this indefinitely. New space travelers ask, what does it look like outside a ship moving at faster than light speed? Part of the answer can be seen in a simple pane of glass. Light travels slower through glass than it does through open air. Light also moves slower in conventional space than it does in a high-speed mass effect field. This causes refraction. Any light entering at an angle is bent and separated into a spectrum. Objects outside the ship will appear refracted. The greater the distance between the object and subjective speeds of light, the greater the refraction. As the subjective speed of light is raised within the field, objects will appear to redshift, eventually becoming visible only to radio telescope antenna. High-energy electromagnetic sources, normally hidden to the eye, become visible in the high blue spectrum. As the speed of light continues to be raised, X-ray, gamma ray, and eventually cosmic ray sources become visible. Stars will be replaced by pulsars, and the accretion disks of black holes quasars, and gamma ray bursts. To an outside observer, a ship within a Mass Effect drive envelope appears blue shifted. If within a field that allows travel at twice the speed of light, any radiation it emits has twice the energy as normal. If the ship is within a field of about 200 times light speed, it radiates visible light as X-rays and gamma rays. The infrared heat from the hull is blue shifted up to the visible spectrum or higher. Ships moving at FTL are visible at great distances, though their signature will only propagate at the speed of light. As positive or negative electric current is passed through an FTL drive core, it acquires a static electrical charge. Drives can be operated an average of 50 hours before they reach charge saturation. This change is proportional to the magnitude of mass reduction. A heavier or faster ship reaches saturation more quickly. If this charge is allowed to build, the core will discharge into the hull of a ship. All ungrounded crew members are fried to a crisp. All electronic systems are burned out, and metal bulkheads may be melted and fused together. The safest way to discharge a core is to land on a planet and establish a connection to the ground, like a lightning rod. Larger vessels like dreadnoughts cannot land unless discharged into a planetary magnetic field. The ship passes the charge from the drive core to the exterior armored hull, then dives into the magnetic field. As the hull discharges, sheets of lightning jump away into the field, creating beautiful auroral displays on the planet. The ship must retract its sensors and weapons while dumping charge to prevent damage, leaving it blind and helpless. Discharging at a moon with a weak magnetic field could take days, as charging into the powerful field of a gas giant may require less than an hour. Deep space facilities, such as the Citadel, often have special discharge facilities for visiting ships. Heat limits the length and intensity of ship-to-ship combat. Starships generate enormous heat when they fire high-energy weapons, perform maneuvering burns, and run onboard combat electronics. In combat, warships produce heat more quickly than they can disperse it. As heat builds within a vessel, crewed spaces become increasingly uncomfortable. Before the heat reaches lethal levels, the ship must win or retreat by entering FTL. After an FTL run, the ship halts, shuts down non-essential systems, and activates the heat radiation gear. Combat endurance varies by ship design and by the battle's location. Battles in the deep cold of interstellar space can go on for some time. Engagements close to a star are brief, since habitable worlds are usually close to a star. Battles over them are frantic. Shells lofted by surface navies crash back to Earth when their acceleration is overwhelmed by gravity and air resistance. In space, a projectile has unlimited range. It will keep moving until it hits something. Practical gunnery range is determined by the velocity of the attacker's ordnance and the maneuverability of the target. Beyond a certain range, a small ship's ability to dodge trumps a larger attacker's projectile speed. The longest range combat occurs between dreadnoughts, whose projectiles have the highest velocity but are the least maneuverable. The shortest range is between frigates, which have the slowest projectile velocities and highest maneuverability. Opposing dreadnoughts open with a main gun artillery duel at extreme ranges of tens of thousands of kilometers. The fleets close, maintaining evasive lateral motion while keeping their bow guns facing the enemy. Fighters are launched in an attempt to close to disruptor torpedo range. Cautious admirals weaken the enemy with ranged fire and fighter strikes before committing to close action. Aggressive commanders advance so cruisers and frigates can engage. At long range, the main guns of cruisers become useful. Friendly interceptors engage enemy fighters until the attackers enter the range of ship-based Guardian fire. Dreadnoughts fire from the rear, screened by smaller ships. Commanders must decide whether to commit to a general melee or retreat into FTL. At medium range, ships can use broadside guns. These intermingle and it becomes difficult to retreat in order. Ships with damaged kinetic barriers are vulnerable to Wolfpack frigate flotillas that speed through the battle space. Only fighters and frigates enter close knife fight range of 10 or fewer kilometers. Fighters loose their disruptor torpedoes, bringing down a ship's kinetic barriers, allowing it to be swarmed by frigates. Guardian lasers become viable weapons, swatting down fighters and boiling away warship armor. Neither dreadnoughts nor cruisers can use their main guns at close range. Laying the bow on a moving target becomes impossible. Reheated thruster exhaust becomes a hazard. The dreadnought is the ultimate arbiter of space warfare. Millions of tons of ceramic and polymer dedicated to the projection of firepower against an enemy vessel of like ability. No sane commander would face a dreadnought with anything less than another dreadnought. A dreadnought's power lies in the length of its main gun. Dreadnoughts range from 800 meters to 1 kilometer long. With a main gun of commensurate length, an 800-meter mass accelerator is capable of accelerating one 2-kilogram slug to a velocity of 283 kilometers per second every 2 seconds. Each slug has the kinetic energy of 38 kilotons of TNT, 3 times the energy released by the fission weapon that destroyed Hiroshima. When used to bombard planets, some of this kinetic energy is lost due to atmospheric re-entry friction. As a rule of thumb, each Earth atmosphere of air pressure saps approximately 20% of a projectile's impact energy. The Turian fleet currently has 37 dreadnoughts, the Asari 21, the Solarians 16. Humanity has 6, with an additional hull under construction at Arcturus Station. Alliance battleships are named from mountains of Earth. Fighters are single-pilot combat small craft. They are lightweight enough that they can be economically fitted, powerful element zero cores, making them capable of greater acceleration and sharper maneuvers than starships. Kinetic barrier shields change starship battles from short, vicious bloodbaths to extended, indecisive slugging matches. Only the main gun of a dreadnought could punch a mass accelerator slug through the barriers of an opposing dreadnought. This changed with the development of the fighter-launched mass disruptor torpedo, a short-range weapon that can penetrate kinetic barriers to destroy their projector assemblies. Starship Guardian defenses must be overwhelmed through swarm tactics. Fighter groups can take heavy casualties pressing their torpedo attacks home. Its fighter-launched torpedoes have crippled an enemy's barriers. The mass accelerators on fighters and cruisers can make short work of them. Interceptors are a type of fighter optimized to attack other fighters, with no ability to damage starships. Interceptors are used to screen friendly units from incoming fighter attack. Frigates are light escort and scouting vessels. They often have extensive Guardian systems who provide anti-fighter screening for capital ships and carry a squad of Marines for security and groundside duty. Unlike larger vessels, frigates are able to land on planets. Frigate drive systems allow them to achieve high FTL cruise speeds. They also have proportionally larger thrusters and lighter design mass, allowing them to maneuver more handily in combat speed more handily in combat. In combat, speed and maneuverability make a frigate immune to the long-range fire of larger vessels. In the time it takes projectiles to reach them, frigates are no longer where they were predicted to be. In fleet combat, frigates are organized into wolfpack flotillas of 4 to 6. Wolfpacks speed through enemy formations, hunting enemy vessels whose kinetic barriers have been taken down by fighter-launched disruptor torpedoes. The Wolfpack circles strafe vulnerable targets using their superior speed and maneuverability to evade return fire. Alliance frigates are named for great battles in human history. Dispersal of heat generated by onboard systems is a critical issue for a ship. If it cannot deal with the heat, the crew may be cooked within their hull. Radiation is the only way to shed heat in a vacuum. Civilian vessels utilize large, fragile radiator panels that are impossible to armor. Warships use diffuse radiator arrays, ceramic strips along the exterior of the armored hull. These make the ships appear striped to the thermographic sensors. Hence, the arrangement of the strips depends on the internal configuration of the ship. Pattern for each vessel are unique and striking. In older ships, the DRA strips could become red or white hot, dubbed tiger strips or war paint by humans. The glowing DRA had a psychological impact on pirates and irregular forces. Strip radiators are not as efficient as panels, but damaged by enemy fire, the ship only loses a small portion of its total radiation capacity. In most cases, a vessel's DRA alone allows it to cruise with no difficulties. Operations deep within a solar system can cause problems. A ship engaged in combat can produce titanic amounts of heat from maneuvering burns and weapons fire. When fighting in a high heat environment, warships employ high-efficiency droplet heat sinks. In a droplet system, tanks of liquid sodium or lithium absorb heat within the ship. The liquid is vented from spray nozzles near the bow as thin sheets of millions of micrometer-scale droplets. The droplets are caught at the stern and recycled into the system. A droplet system can sink 10 to 100 times as much heat as DRA strips. Droplet sheets resemble a surface ship's wake through the water. The wake peels out in sharp turns, spreading a fan of droplets as the ship changes vectors and leaves the coolant behind. Drones are small robots used to support and supplement organic soldiers on the battlefield. They have no artificial intelligence of any kind, but follow fixed, minimally adaptive programs. Most varieties employ mass effect levitation to improve mobility. All modern armies rely on veritable fleets of drones for routine soldiering, static garrisons, patrols, etc. The use of drones in non-critical duty keeps manpower needs down and reduces casualties in low-intensity conflicts. Less advanced races and cultures with less sensitivity to casualties have correspondingly fewer drones in their inventory. Drones are of little use in conventional open field battles, as they are poorly armed and armored. In addition to combat drones, support drones are used to assist organic units in the field. Reconnaissance drones are small, stealthy craft that screen combat units in the field and warn commanders when enemies are spotted. Electronic warfare drones supplement battlefield technicians, serving as mobile jammers and ELINT, electronic intelligence gathering platforms. Military and civilian police utilize Dazzler drones, equipped with powerful strobe lights to disorient and subdue intruders using non-lethal force. Drone formations are officially referred to as wings. Common soldiers refer to friendly formations as flocks and enemy formations as swarms. A ship's General Area Defense Integration Anti-Spacecraft Network, Guardian, consists of anti-missile, anti-fighter laser turrets on the exterior hull. Because these are under computer control, the gunnery officer needs to do little beyond turn the system on and designate targets as hostile. Since lasers move at light speed, they cannot be dodged by anything moving at non-relativistic speeds. Unless the beam is aimed poorly, it will always hit its target. In the early stages of the battle, the Guardian fire is 100% accurate. It is not 100% lethal, but it doesn't have to be. Damaged fighters must break off for repairs. Lasers are limited by diffraction. The beam spreads out, increasing its energy density, watts per M2. The weapon can place on a target. Any high-powered laser is a short-range weapon. Guardian networks have another limitation: heat. Weapons-grade lasers require a cooldown time, during which heat is transferred to sinks or radiators. As lasers fire, heat builds within them, reducing damage, range, and accuracy. Fighters attack in swarms. The first few will be hit by Guardian, but as battle continues, the effects of laser overheat allow attackers to press ever closer to the ship. Constant use will burn out a laser. Guardian lasers typically operate in infrared frequencies. Shorter frequencies would offer superior stopping power and range, but degradation of focal arrays and mirrors would make them expensive to maintain, and most prefer mechanical reliability over bleeding-edge performance where lives are concerned. Solarians, however, use near ultraviolet frequency lasers with 6 times the range, believing that having additional time to shoot down incoming missiles is more important. Lasers are not blocked by kinetic barriers of capital ships. However, the range of lasers limits their use to a rare knife fight range ship-to-ship combat. Biotics possess extraordinary abilities, but they must live with minor inconveniences. The most obvious issue is getting adequate nutrition. Hitting biotic mass effect fields takes a toll on metabolism. That active biotics develop ravenous appetites. The standard Alliance combat ration for a soldier is 3,000 calories a day. Biotics are given 4,500, as well as a canteen potent energy drink for quick refreshment during hard combat. Another issue is electric charge. Electricity accumulated in Starship drive cores must be discharged, and so must the electricity in a biotic user. Biotics are prone to small static discharges when they touch metal. Unfortunately, human biotics also face suspicion and persecution, getting with the popular misconception that they can read and control minds. Biotics symbolize the dehumanization of mankind. To people philosophically or religiously opposed to gene modification and cybernetics, militaries are the only organization that always welcome biotics, offering them huge recruitment incentives. Biotic implants and amplifiers only provide the potential to create coherent mass effect fields. Whether biotics can actually do so is largely determined by their training. Biotics must develop conscious control over their nervous systems, sending specific electrical impulses to the element 0 nodules embedded in their nerves. They are taught to use their implants and amps with biofeedback devices and physical mnemonics. Specific gestures or muscle movements fire the proper sequences of nerves to activate a certain skill. Codex Industries pioneered biotic training with the Biotic Acclimation and Temperance Training Program. Although BOT did not achieve the desired results, many techniques taught are still used today. Many human think tanks are trying to develop some form of biotic super soldier. Most are benign efforts to create more flexible troops. Others, less publicly known, are unapologetic attempts to create some Nietzschean Superman. Real-time communication is possible thanks to networks of expensive mass relays, comm buoys, that can daisy chain a transmission via lasers. Comm buoys are maintained in patterns built outward from each mass relay. The buoys are little more than a cluster of primitive miniature mass relays. Each individual buoy is connected to a partner on another buoy in the network, forming a corridor of low mass space. Type gain communications lasers are piped through these tubes of FTL space, allowing virtually instant communication to anywhere in the network. The network connects across regions by communication lasers through mass relays. With the system, the only communication delay is the light lag between the source or destination and the closest buoy. As long as all parties remain within half a light second, 150,000 kilometers of buoys, seamless real-time communications are possible. Since buoys are maintained in all traveled areas, most enjoy unlimited instant communication. Ships only suffer communications lag when operating off established deep space routes and around uninhabited outer system gas giants and other unsettled areas. During wartime, comm buoy networks are the first target of attack. Once the network is severed, it can take anywhere from weeks to years to get a message out of a contested system. In systems where a buoy network has not yet been built or has been destroyed, rapid communication means ferrying information through high-speed courier ships and unmanned data drones. While comm buoys allow rapid transmission, there is a finite amount of bandwidth available. Given that trillions of people may be trying to pass a message through a given buoy at any one time, access to the network is parceled out on priority tiers. The Citadel Council and the Spectres have absolute priority. If they are using all the bandwidth, everyone else must wait. Individual governments and their militaries enjoy the next highest tier. During wartime, civilian communication can suffer hours or even days of lag. Intelligence agencies study ping time through various systems to predict military buildups. Below the governments and militaries, bandwidth priority is sold to the highest bidder. Media conglomerates, particularly headline news networks, purchase higher priority to provide their viewers with timely information. Corporations that require timely information and response capability, for example, financial institutions and investment firms, so invest heavily in priority access. The funds acquired through sale of bandwidth are used to maintain and expand the communications infrastructure. While everyone with a computer has guaranteed free and unlimited access to the galactic extranet, they are last in line for bandwidth and may have to wait for their requests to be processed. Bandwidth resale corporations use investment capital to purchase blocks of high-priority access made available by paid subscription. Even in the future, we can't escape monthly internet bills, it seems. As the population of the galaxy increases, new worlds are settled. Timely access for home users and frontier settlements with underdeveloped communication infrastructure is a growing problem. To ameliorate bandwidth issues, a sophisticated array of data caches and virtual intelligence search agent programs are available. When a user submits a query, it is first routed to the data cache on their colony or star system. At the cache, the user's search agent VI collates mountains of locally stored data to find the desired material. If the information is not available locally, the query is passed along to neighboring systems and then outward in an expanding network. VI search agents in those systems replicate the search. If the desired information is found, it is compressed into a burst file and queued for transmission to the source system. The burst is assigned a priority based on the number of queries for it. And the greater the number of queries, the higher the priority. When a new solar system is first connected to the net, a selection of the most popular data is installed locally. Though storage hardware is cheap, the capacity required to hold all the data produced every day by trillions of people in hundreds of worlds is not trivial. It's not economical to store local copies of all the data available on obscure topics just in case. As colonies mature, older and less popular chunks of data filter into them as a result of queries and are placed in the local archive. Searches for obscure topics are increasingly likely to produce instant results as the archive grows.